I want to invite you to stand this morning. If you're here in person, we're going to start by singing some Christmas music together. Thank you so much for singing with us this morning. I want to give you just a few seconds to greet the people around you, and then we'll continue with the morning.
That glorious song of old, from angels bending near the earth to touch their harps of gold. Peace on the earth, goodwill to men, from heaven's all gracious King. The world in solemn stillness lay to hear the angels sing. Peace on earth, peace on earth, peace on earth, peace on earth. Still through the cloven skies they come with peaceful wings unfurled, and still their heavenly music floats o'er all the weary world. Above its sad and lowly plains they bend on hovering wing, and ere o'er its babble sounds the blessed angels sing. Peace on earth, peace on earth, peace on earth, peace on earth. O ye beneath life's crushing load, whose forms are bending low, who toil along the climbing way with painful steps and slow. Look now, for glad and golden hours come swiftly on the wing. Oh, rest beside the weary road and hear the angels sing. Peace on earth, 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 peace on earth.
Thank you so much for singing with us. You can be seated.
Watershed. Blair here, and I am your family pastor, which for those who don't know means that I am with our kids from birth all the way to high school on Sunday mornings and beyond. And so I'm actually here this morning just to share a little bit of an update in the story and the evolution of Watershed. So for those who don't know, we have just recently moved all of our kids that are in elementary school, middle school, and high school downstairs into a new space in the basement. Started with a very dark basement. Instead of letting that space go to waste, we decided, why not move our kids downstairs? That space went from what you see to feeling like you are in this enchanted space. This space that kids walk into with twinkly lights in a tree that is not real, but we wanted it to look real, to greenery on the walls, to just lights and staging. This is a space that we are just so excited is going to take off. And it gives us many opportunities. So many doors will open now that we have staging and lighting. Your labor. So I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, we are grateful. We are grateful for everybody who came and hammered a nail. We are grateful for everybody who helped to organize. We are grateful for everybody who even spent 5 minutes in that space, whether it was cleaning, moving boxes out, setting up staging, dusting a chair off. I am just beyond grateful, and I think I speak for me, Matt, and the rest of our staff whenever I say that this wouldn't have happened without you. You are the reason that we were able to build a tree in that space. You are the reason that our kindergarten and first graders have this little nook that they think is the most special thing in the world. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. There's so many things in each classroom that you have helped to make special. And we just wanted to say thank you this morning and give you a sneak peek. Now, if you want to see it in real life, feel free to do a walkthrough. Once you get downstairs, we hope that you feel this enchantment and this magic that happens in our garden space. So thank you. So from me, from the 60 volunteers that work in this space, from the parents, and from these kids and students, we just want to say thank you.
Well, good morning. If, like Blair said, you haven't had a chance to check out the garden space, that's going to be a perfect setup and transition to the first thing I want to draw your attention to this morning, and that's our Christmas Eve service. So, today, believe it or not, is actually the very last Sunday here at Watershed for 2022. Our Christmas Eve a decent chance, don't shoot the messenger, there's a decent chance you're going to have to go into our overflow space, which is in the garden. So you might get to see it next week if you haven't seen it yet. Fortunately, it's a really cool space, so that might be fun for you. But in all seriousness, next Saturday, Christmas Eve, is the very last 2022 service here at Watershed. It's our candlelight Christmas service, 4:30 p.m. Don't miss it. But because it's the last service, that means Christmas Day, the 25th, we're not going to be here. You could show up. Building will be locked, so have fun. And then New Year's Day, January 1st, also, we are not going to be here. So for Christmas Eve, RSVP for that. So we have so we know how many chairs to put out. So we know how many chairs to put downstairs in the overflow space. But then don't show up on Christmas Day. I don't think any of you would have, but just to be safe. And then don't show up New Year's Day either. We're going to be gathering back again for the first time in 2023 on January 8th. All right? And that is also when we're going to kick off a brand new series called What About Love, which is the latest iteration of our annual All Things Relationship series. So romantic, platonic, familial, generational, professional, anything related to relationships we are going to be diving into during this extended series that kicks off when we gather back again in the new year on the 8th of January. And to kind of piggyback off this, because all of these flow together so perfectly, we planned it this way. We have a lot of exciting things coming in 2023, and the very first one that I want to announce to you fits like a glove with this series, and that is the very first ICU Talks event. Yeah. I knew I had to pause for that. That was coming. Our very first ICU Talks event on the 21st. So if you're not familiar with ICU Talks, it is a mental health ministry, a justice ministry in our minds that we partner with and now host, which we're really excited about. Right here at Watershed, 6 p.m. On the 21st is going to be this kickoff event. You'll get to hear, again, because you just did get to hear from her a second ago, but you'll get to hear from Kim Honeycutt, the founder of ICU Talks, but not more importantly, but of comparable importance, you'll get to hear from our keynote speaker, KJ Ramsey, who is a trauma-informed licensed counselor and has an amazing, amazing story. So here's the thing. This is totally free. You can just show up, but we would love it if you would RSVP. So you can follow that link. You can either go onto the ICU Talks website or you can follow that QR code and you can RSVP. We want to pack this place out, like Christmas Eve, Easter numbers, like 250 people here. So please come for that. It's going to be a really fun, really amazing, really powerful night. So do that. Couple reminders beyond all of this, some things kind of on the horizon. The first is technically today was the day that you were supposed to bring in anything that you were bringing for our Fostering Christmas partnership, but in our just utter generosity, we're going to give you till tomorrow at noon. If you're kind of running late. Tuesday is when I'm going to bring all of the items for this partnership over to Bethany Christian Services to take those over there and let them distribute them to their foster kids, foster families. If you're new with us, just a reminder what this is. Bethany is an ongoing partner of ours, and specifically the way that we show up with and for them is an area of their ministry where they are fostering children who are separated, migrant and refugee children who are separated at the border from their parents and guardians, put them into temporary housing situations with families until their cases can be resolved and they can be reunited with their families and guardians here in the States. And so it's just been a really powerful partnership, and they've got, I think at this point we're probably pushing 50 reunifications in this calendar year, which we're really excited about. So tomorrow at noon, drop those off. And then one final thing, if you're brand new with us, then we want to alert you to something called Preface, kicking off on the 17th of January. This is sort of our Welcome to Watershed experience. It's an opportunity for you to learn a bit more about us, but if I'm being honest, it's an opportunity for you to learn a little bit more about you. In your spiritual journey, see how that intersects with ours and with those who you go through Preface with. So it's totally free. Childcare is provided. It's a 4-week experience right here at Watershed. So if you're new or haven't done Preface before, do that.
But if you're less new and maybe have done preface before, then consider joining me for something called Reclamation. It's a bit of a deeper dive into various theological topics and ideas, and I'm going to shock anyone who knows me in announcing the topic. It's Reclamation Practice. We're going to look at things like sacrament, baptism, communion, worship, which is going to be fun because I'm not musical in the slightest. We're going to look at mission, and then the one that's going to floor everyone in this room who has been around me, prayer. We're gonna look at prayer. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. 4-week experience that runs concurrent with preface, so of course childcare is provided for all that as well. So that's what's on the horizon. One final thing, as we close out the year, we have a little bit more ground to make up from a giving standpoint. We've been talking to you about the deficit we've been trying to tackle. We're give or take about, I think about 25,000 or so away from what we're trying to hit. So if you are sort of sitting here kind of waiting for tax purposes, kind of waiting to see where you want to be generous at the end of the year, know that any amount given to this deficit, there's a matching promise that's been made, so dollar for dollar. So your money will go double towards that deficit. But one thing that we really want to emphasize going into the new year is that the way to not only sustain the work here at Watershed, but to give us the bandwidth we need to be a little audacious, to dream a little bit, to be intentional, to bring in guest speakers to help our partners like ICU Talks and Bethany. All of that is best made possible by reoccurring giving. Because what reoccurring giving does is allows us to know what is coming so that we can be really intentional and really strategic with the way that we steward that money. And so our goal every single month is 5 new reoccurring individuals or households at approximately $100 a month. For the most part, we've done awesome this year. We're a little behind in these final 2 months, so I think we have 2 for December so far. We would love to hit that number 5 mark by the end of this year. So to all of you who continue to support the work we do here, thank you, thank you, thank you. Lots of ways that you can do that. There's the QR code, there's our website. Sidebar, we have a new website. So if you haven't checked it out, literally it happened like 2 days ago. But it's awesome. Samantha Cordialini, who is awesome in so many ways, designed that for us. So kudos, Samantha. And so check that out. You can give on there, or you can see all our announcements on there. Or if you're old school, you can give in the boxes in the back. But thank you for your time. This was sort of a marathon this morning of announcements. It's lovely to see you. I'm a little torn. On one hand, I really respect the fact that all of you are here with the World Cup going on. But there's another contingent who's not here, who maybe I respect even more. So, but in all seriousness, it's good to see you. We're happy to have you. Welcome. See ya.
Mary, full of grace, the Lord your God is with thee. Blessed are you to bless all the world. Mary, peace is yours. The Spirit is upon you. You will be with child. Do not fear. Mother of God, your baby boy will grant us peace. Your baby boy will grant us peace. Word made flesh, born of Virgin Mary. Hope is in the world, Emmanuel. The Lamb of God, born to die, King, and He would show the world a better way. Emmanuel. Son of God, hear your people calling. Oh, cry out for peace. Can you hear? In our despair, we doubt in your return. Messiah, will you come once again?
Good morning, Watershed, and Merry almost Christmas. If you're new in this space, let me welcome you and introduce myself. My name is Sean, and I'm billed as a teaching pastor. I'm one of a group of 5 people on any given Sunday who talk up here. Truly, though, I prefer to call myself a storyteller. I think it's a better fit. I'm a creative writer. I teach writing at a local university here, but also historically, storytellers and story keepers have a rich tradition in indigenous cultures. And as a Costa Rican woman, I sort of claim that heritage. So I prefer storyteller than teaching pastor. It seems a little more gentle also. I am a story keeper, but a lot of the stories of my culture have been kept hidden or are really grossly underplayed. And I've talked a lot about decolonizing my faith before, but I don't think I've explained what I mean by that. When I use the term decolonization, I refer to pulling at the thread of my past, my heritage that I have always felt pulsing within my veins. I grew up Catholic. I don't know that that comes as much of a surprise. Over 75% of Costa Ricans are practicing Catholics, and Catholicism in Latin America has very deep and very troubling roots that span all the way across the ocean to Spain. My faith is inherited from my colonial oppressor. My native tongue of Spanish is also gifted to me by my oppressor. The indigenous tongues of my antepasados, my ancestors, were brutally cut out. So my religious identity is a relationship best labeled as complicated. I work to hold the ambiguity, the tension of loving a Jesus that was introduced to me by an abuser. I work to hold the duality that my faith is rooted in systems of oppression, but also informed by indigenous wisdom. Mine is borderland faith, one foot planted in two very different landscapes. I have the privileged Eurocentric Christian perspective and the marginalized faith of my indigenous ancestors. They both run through my veins. And in my quest to decolonize my religion, I've studied indigenous faith and wisdom. I have visited sacred Mayan and Aztec sites. I have witnessed and participated in Mayan ceremonies, and I've done a lot of research. Modern story keepers are researchers, after all, driven by passion to unearth the stories that tell us who we are, driven to know our native lands before they were claimed. But listen, I also love the sanctity and traditions of Catholicism. I love the stories of martyred saints, who for me are far more authentic heroes than any masked crusader hero could be. But I think what I love most of all is the Virgin Mary. Most of Latino America is a matriarchal society, despite pushing against toxic masculinity that parades around the label of machismo. Family is sacrosanct in Costa Rica, and the nucleus of that is the woman, the mother, the giver and sustainer of life. It is la madre who holds the center. So you know we love our Virgencitas, our Virgin Marys. And the most iconic of those is La Virgen de Guadalupe. She's adorned in a regal cloak of pinprick stars, standing on a crescent moon held up by a sweet cherub and radiating an entire golden aura instead of a modest halo. This depiction of Mother Mary, hopefully it's on the screen here soon, is one of power and opulence. But for all that regal glory, the Virgin Mary appeared to a peasant. Mary spoke to Juan Diego in his native Aztec tongue of Nahuatl. This image of her is synonymous for Mexico and Central America and is as much a cultural symbol as it is a religious one. I grew up with posters of this image, like maybe In Sync would be a poster and like a white counterpart friend of mine, but I had like the Virgin Mary or the Sacred Heart of Jesus, literally a poster above my bed. It was so cool. So the Virgin Mary was important to us, right? I had images of her. I had little statue replicas. Along with the rosary and the crucifix, it was perhaps the most common relic of my faith growing up. Catholics grow up with Virgin Mary. She is just a commonplace fixture in our lives. Her shrine at the Basilica in Mexico City is the third most visited sacred site in the world. That she chose an indigenous peasant to bear her message is significant. That she spoke the language of the oppressed, of the indigenous, is significant. The Virgen de Guadalupe embraces duality by her very origin story. And of course, I have an incredible soft spot for her because her celebrated feast day was this Monday, December 12th. And many of you know that I have twin boys. They were due in early January, and every doctor, every nurse, every medical professional, every woman over 50 told me that I was going to have those babies in December and not like January 7th, which was their due date. And at my 37-week appointment, I was admitted into the hospital to be induced, and I remember calling my parents, and my mom was just beaming. I could hear it over the phone, the excitement in her voice. She said, "Maybe you'll have them on the feast day of the Virgin Mary." And I was like, I don't think it works that way. So I laughed. But then two and a half days later, the boys appeared on 12/12/12, the Virgin Feast Day of the Virgin Mary. And I can't help but feel cosmically connected to her now because of that. And when I think about the events that unfolded just after their birth, we had a really scary incident with one of our sons. I can't help but consider the Virgen de Guadalupe a protector for my boys. And I'll be honest, growing up, I never understood the criticism that Catholics worship saints and Mary. We venerate them, totally. I don't think that's the same thing, though. Veneration is about deep and abiding respect. But consider this, the establishment of the church was the one to ascribe a patriarchal bent to God in the first place. With God as a stern ruler casting judgment from some lofty throne, it's no wonder we flock to a mother figure. For Catholics, Mary is a mediator, a gentle, nurturing go-between. Mother Mary provides us with feminine imagery and language to describe the divine. She's maternal. She's compassionate, life-giving, caring, loving. These very traits describe God too, though, do they not? So in this way, those who embrace Mary embrace the plurality of God. In an essay written by Elizabeth Schussler Fiorenza, co-founder and co-editor of the Journalist of Feminist Studies in Religion, there is this nugget of wisdom. She says, the Christian language about God has to transcend patriarchal as well as matriarchal language and symbols, while at the same time employing a variety of human expressions to reflect a pluriformity of human experiences. In other words, transcending both masculine and feminine doesn't mean to reject either, but to accept both, and a myriad of other human dimensions as part of the divine. Throughout the world, there are countless depictions of Virgin Mary, perhaps thousands and thousands of Madonnas, all with their unique stories and feast days, all projecting a feminine understanding of God. But Black Madonnas, those are rare. In fact, there are only an estimated 500 around the world. Costa Rica's Virgin Mary is one of those Black Madonnas, and her story is fascinating to me, not least because it epitomizes the borderland faith I feel so drawn to. She is known now as La Virgen de los Ángeles, Virgin of the Angels, but before that, she had another name. She was affectionately called La Negrita, a term that translates to little black one. To our American ears, we might cringe at this, but this was a term of endearment spoken with much reverence. La Negrita, by her very essence, asks me to embrace the duality of contradiction. She asks me to abide in ambiguity. So here's her story. In 1635, a young woman, by some accounts a girl, was walking through the forest and came across a small, dark-colored stone of a mother holding a child. The child had one palm placed on his mother's chest, and as the story goes, the young woman brought the miniature statue home. But the statue kept reappearing in the same spot in the forest the very next day. So the women decided to consult the local Catholic priest, and the icon, by now recognized as the Virgin Mary and baby Jesus, was placed in a box in the church for safekeeping, under lock and key. But again, the little Mary reappeared in the woods the next day. This account of the miraculous appearance of the Virgin Mary isn't so different from other apparition stories around the globe, and yet it's a unique story, and here's why. First, the Virgin Mary is made of black stone and clearly a Black Madonna by her features. The second remarkable part of this story is the young woman to whom La Negrita appears. The young woman came from Puebla de los Pardos. The term pardo meant free black person. Puebla de los Pardos, then, was a town or a barrio or a neighborhood designated for free blacks on the outskirts of the colonial city of Cartago in Costa Rica. This young woman was of African descent, living in colonial Costa Rica under the rule of the Spanish crown. Colonial Costa Rica had indentured servants, but the slave trade there never really took a strong foothold. Slavery was a really expensive enterprise, and at the time, Costa Rica was underdeveloped and poor compared to its other Central American neighbors. Thus, the country was largely ignored by Spain, and many Africans were able to purchase their freedom. Sorry, turning the page. I'm really a storyteller. They were able to earn their freedom, and they earned money by working on cacao plantations. Of course, this does not at all diminish the horrors of slavery, nor does it pardon any violence. But in much of the New World in the 1600s, slavery was the primary means of labor on plantations. So in many ways, a settlement of free blacks in 1635 is rare, especially since slavery wasn't abolished until 1824, 3 years after Costa Rica won its independence from Spain. You didn't know you were going to get a little history lesson today, did you? But listen, a black Virgin Mary appears to a woman of Afro descent. Many African free men married indigenous Costa Rican women, so our young woman of African descent likely had indigeneity of both Costa Rican and African indigenous tribes. The layers of contradiction, of duality, are so clearly displayed. The mother of Jesus is for all, and that she would appear to an indigenous woman who, even though free, would have been marginalized is profound. There's a priest in the story, remember? After La Negrita keeps escaping and reappearing in Pueblo de los Prado woods, he decides the Virgin Mary obviously belongs among her people. So he commissions a church to be built for La Negrita, where she was found. A couple of years later, the Catholic bishop establishes La Confradia, a lay group of free blacks tasked with maintaining and venerating this really precious statue. So for 200 years, this Black Madonna would peacefully abide in this community among people of Afro descent mixed with indigenous and Spanish blood, no doubt. I've seen Mayan ceremonies. I have read about African rituals, ceremonies of the Asante, the Yoruba, and other tribes. I can only imagine the celebrations this community held to honor their Black mother. It would have been a blend of indigenous sacred rituals. It would likely incorporate sacred practice and ancient wisdom, dancing and singing, and likely, under the gaze of any colonial Spaniard, it would have been misunderstood too, perhaps even mischaracterized. But for 200 years, La Negrita was revered and celebrated exclusively by a marginal community. It was only during the fight for independence from Spain that the church stole, the Black Madonna from the Pardos. She was taken to the Basilica in Cartago and there renamed La Virgen de los Ángeles, Virgin of the Angels. Of course, there's irony here. The Catholic Church was the oppressor in many ways, and the Spanish king sent forth a horde of conquistadors to claim new territories for the crown and for God. Native tongues were taught to worship different gods in different languages. Indigenous peoples were slaughtered or stripped of their identities and forced into submission. Any Catholic symbol could easily and often did become synonymous with the power of malicious empires. And yet, a small Black Mary, nestling her Black son, was found by a Black woman, a woman with no name, in a Black part of town. In the story of Jesus, it is women who hold the center. Writer of Black liturgies Cole Arthur Riley says this: pay attention to the silence of the men in the Christmas story. Zechariah can't speak. Joseph doesn't speak, while the words and emotions of Mary and Elizabeth take their rightful place. The sound of Advent is the voice of women. Silence is divine recentering. The sound of Advent is the voice of women. I imagine Mary's labor, how she would have called out, how her voice might sound in the hollow of a barn, how the silence would envelop her too, recenter her. And let's take a minute here on her precious son. Shortly after the birth of Jesus, Mary and Joseph flee Judea to Egypt. They are Jewish refugees who leave their homeland in fear of persecution and death. They narrowly escape King Herod's horrific massacre. How can we read the story of Jesus' birth and the start of his life and not acknowledge that if we are true followers of Christ, then we must be called to love the stranger, the immigrant, the other? The nativity story is one of resistance. His very birth defies the ruling power. Another Black woman I follow, Marcy Alvis Walker, says it this way: this Christmas story comes from the occupied, not the conqueror. This story comes from the unheard, not the praised. This story comes from the disregarded, not the revered. It comes from the undocumented, the browbeaten. This story comes from the underprivileged, not the affluent. This story comes from the despised, not the favored. I don't know if you know this, but Jesus' birth is not a Christian story, after all. It's a Jewish one. Over and over and over again in the life story of Mary, in the glimpses that we get of it anyway, we see a woman who lives in marginal spaces. It doesn't surprise me at all that she chooses to appear to those in society that society would deem inferior: the peasants and the outcasts, the misfits, the have-nots. An institution can use her image as a symbol of power in the same way they can use the cross as an icon of superiority. But the entities those symbols represent defy such toxic power. I grew up with the rule, don't use God's name in vain. And what it meant was that it banned the phrase, "oh my God," in my house, or any variation of that. You would definitely never say GD, right? I see that differently now. Don't use God's name in vain. Using the Lord's name in vain, I think that's certain churches justifying all manner of hatred under the name of God. It's vanity and pride that comes with superiority that has forgotten the story of baby Jesus, of the pregnancy of an unwed mother, of a refugee family living in a foreign land, of a baby would-be king who is in fact not white. In this story, I see a reclamation. I see a holy figure that crosses borders, theologies, that embraces contradictions and reveals herself to the most humble among us. And why not? In fact, nothing makes more sense to me. The Mary we encounter in the Gospels is a young woman. She's a girl, perhaps not much different from the Costa Rican indigenous woman of our story. I want to visit Mary's words from the Gospel of Luke, and for context, she's gone to visit her relative Elizabeth, and the two women greet each other with overwhelming joy. And this is the part where the men are silent. Joseph doesn't speak, Zechariah can't speak, but Mary says this: "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior, for he has looked on the humble estate of his servant. For behold, from now on, all generations will call me blessed. For he who is mighty has done great things for me, and holy is his name. And his mercy is for those who fear him from generation to generation. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in their thoughts of their hearts. He has brought down the mighty from their thrones and exalted those of humble estate. He has filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he has sent away empty. He has helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy, as he spoke to our fathers, to Abraham, and to his offspring forever." In this passage, Mary depicts a humility and servanthood, a poverty that also describes the indigenous woman who discovered her icon in those woods. And in this very same passage, Mary addresses the fate of the oppressors. They shall fall from their thrones. Who is this Mary for, I ask you? Is she for the crown? The colonial empire? The Spanish conquistador? No. She's for the humble, for the meek, for the women of history whose stories are buried, whose names are forgotten. Mary, who delivered her son, Savior in the world, in a barn amongst the livestock. Of course she connects to the descendants of the enslaved. Of course she connects with the outcasts, the marginalized, the misunderstood. Last week, Kim talked about this very thing, about the many, many women of the Bible and in history who go unnamed, who are silenced or made to be the side characters. In this moving scene, Mary and Elizabeth's poignant dialogue is centered in the text, which is pretty remarkable. Just before the passage we read, Elizabeth had greeted Mary first, calling her blessed among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb. Those lines of exaltation have become a critical part of the Rosary prayer, which is a keystone practice for many, many Catholics. And in this scene, it is the women who are the principal characters, women who are telling the good news. And for the record, Jesus' life and resurrection are bookended by parallel storylines. Angels appear first to women, and women believe. They don't ask for proof. They just believe. It is the men in these stories that need convincing. When the women tell the disciples about the empty tomb, the women are dismissed, their testimony considered false talk. When Joseph discovers Mary is pregnant, he plans to quietly dismiss her to save her from public disgrace. So nice. It takes an angel to convince him otherwise. Parallel storylines, women holding the center. So when Mary keeps showing up in the native places of the antepasados who are not in fact part of the ruling class, I see that as an invitation. When Mary reveals herself in the form of an indigenous woman to a woman of indigenous descent, I see myself reflected too. We can weaponize religious iconography all we want. Mother Mary, Jesus, they find a way to be with their people, to embrace with abundant love what has been outcast. Do you guys want to meet La Negrita? I've got some pictures. There's going to be some photos here. So this is the stone, how it would have appeared in the woods. And she's little. And so once she got to the basilica in Cartago, they added a lot of opulent gold adornments. I think that was added when she reached the cathedral. There you can see it, right? The ornateness of it. I prefer the simplicity of how she originally appeared. I find comfort in the roundness of her body, in her maternal care. She's made of rock. Some say the icon is a blend of the jade that Costa Rica is famous for and volcanic rock that also punctuates the architecture of my beloved homeland. She simultaneously connects me to the landscape of my identity, to the motherland, and reminds me of the universality of matriarchal love. This is the fourth Sunday in Advent. And if you follow the liturgical calendar, Advent marks the beginning of the new year in the Christian faith. Advent, which comes from the Latin adventus, means coming. By now, Mary had started her long, arduous journey to Bethlehem. By now, the birth of Jesus was close at hand. In 2021, as many of you know, I lost 3 matriarchs in my life. First, my paternal grandmother, then my abuela, and then shockingly, my own mother. I cannot express the comfort the Virgin Mary brings me in the absence of my most immediate mother figures. Part of the Virgen de Guadalupe story talks about Juan Diego rushing home to take care of a sick relative. Mary appears to him and she says, "Am I not here? I who am your mother?" She was gently chastising him for not seeking her divine help. And this phrase is forever memorialized because it's actually carved into the basilica's entrance. Am I not here? I who am your mother. These words are a salve. Mary, she's for everyone. She offers her mother's love to us all. I am grateful for new beginnings that unfold in the most humble of ways. The unimposing icon of La Negrita, the simplicity of her story, and the simple woman she appeared to, the unassuming, humble birth of Jesus, the soft way they accompany us, the way they cross time and space and borders, the way they embody contradiction to reorder the world and make it new. Watershed. The good news inherent in the birth of Jesus is indeed close at hand. As we leave this space this morning, I pray we carry this Advent truth with us. May we learn to embrace the ambiguity that is present in our lives. May we learn to love like Jesus and Mary. May we understand the good news isn't possible without the resilience and tenderness of a woman. Gosh, if not for a woman. If not for my grandmothers. If not for my mom. If not for an indigenous ancestor. And my God, if not for a Black Madonna. Amen.
Would you stand as we close this morning by singing together? Blessed are the ones who do not bury all the broken pieces of their heart. And blessed are the tears of all the weary, pouring like a sky of falling stars. And blessed are the wounded ones in mourning, brave enough to show the Lord their scars. Blessed are the hurts that are not hidden, open to the healing touch of God. The kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Our hope is in the Lord. Keep your eyes on Him.
Even in the face of great abuse, blessed are the deeds that go unnoticed, serving with unguarded gratitude. Blessed are the ones who fight for justice, longing for the coming day of peace. Blessed is the soul that thirsts for righteousness, welcoming the lost, the last, the least. The kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. This is not the end. Our hope is in the Lord. Keep your eyes on Him.
Blessed are the ones who suffer violence and still have strength to love their enemies. And blessed is the faith of those who persevere. Though they fall, they'll never know defeat. The kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Our hope is in the Lord. Keep your eyes on Him. The kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Our hope is in the Lord. Keep your eyes on Him. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Our hope is in the Lord. Keep your eyes on Him. The kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Our hope is in the Lord. Keep your eyes on Him. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Our hope is in the Lord. Keep your eyes on Him. God, this morning as we leave and we enter into this final week before Christmas, God, may we find the moments of peace, of rest. May we remember that the kingdom belongs to the least, the outcast, the rejected. Those are the places where we find God. And this Christmas season has all the opportunity to remind us of that. So may we find moments this week to reflect, to bring awareness to ourselves, and may it change the way that we view this Christmas season, the way that we view others. Thank you, God. We love you. We pray all this in your name. Amen. Hope you'll join us next Saturday for our Christmas Eve service again at 4:30. We'd love to see you there. Have a great Sunday.